Okay, so living to 120, right. It's like every other day there's another headline about some crazy new anti-aging breakthrough. And I don't know about you, but part of me is like, sign me up. But is any of it actually like legit? Or is it all just hype? That's what we're diving into today. Can we really push human lifespan to 120 and beyond?
It's a question that's fascinated people for, well, probably as long as we've been aware of our own mortality.
Totally. And we've got two really interesting sources for this deep dive. First up, human lifespan. Can new technologies make us live longer? From Fair Observer.
And we'll be balancing that out with a research article called Implausibility of Radical Life Extension in Humans in the 21st Century from Nature Aging.
So we've got like the optimists and the realists, which I think will be a good mix. But before we get into all that, why does this even matter? Why should anyone care about living to 120?
Well, on the one hand, it speaks to this very human desire for a long life. But on a practical level, it makes us think about quality of life as we age. What are the things that really contribute to a long and healthy life?
Okay, so let's start with some of the basics that the Fair Observer article brought up. Like that incredible story of Jeanne Calment, the French woman who lived to be 122. 122. That's just, wow.
She's a fascinating case study because she represents both the potential and the limitations we're talking about. I mean, she lived to 122. That's amazing. But at the same time, that record hasn't been broken, even with all the advances we've made since then.
So it's like, is she the outlier? Or can we all be living that long someday?
Right. And then you've got the fact that globally, more and more people are becoming centenarians living past 100.
Which is amazing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But a lot of that increase is due to things we already know, better healthcare, nutrition, sanitation. The question is, are we simply maximizing our current lifespan potential? Or can we truly extend it beyond what we thought possible?
Okay, so that's a really key distinction, right? It's not just about tapping on a few more years. It's about understanding if there's even a possibility to, like, rewrite the rules of how long we can live.
Uh,
Okay, so if we're living longer already, like thanks to better healthcare and all that, what's stopping us from, like, really breaking through that ceiling? Why do we even age in the first place?
that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Is it just like our parts wear out? Like a car with too many miles on it, eventually it just gives up.
Well, it's more complicated than that. But the analogy isn't entirely wrong.
Okay, how so?
Our bodies are constantly regenerating, right? Repairing, adapting. It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, it's true.
But the instructions for all of that are DNA. It can get damaged over time. And that leads to errors. Like you said, things start to wear out.
So it's like the repair crew is working off of like a blueprint that's getting blurrier and more coffee stained every year.
Exactly. And those errors, they can build up, making our cells less efficient, more likely to malfunction.
And that's where aging comes in.
Exactly. And that brings us to a concept. Both articles mention the Hayflick limit.
The Hayflick limit.
Yeah. Basically, your cells have a mileage limit, kind of like that car analogy we were using.
Okay.
Every time a cell divides, it uses up a little bit of that mileage. And eventually, it reaches a point where it can't divide anymore. It becomes what we call senescent.
So nescent, so it's like the cell retires to a beach somewhere.
Ah. Not quite. Senescent cells, they're kind of like, you imagine them as grumpy neighbors.
Okay. Grumpy how?
Well, they're not contributing anything positive anymore. Instead of doing their part, they're secreting inflammatory substances that can damage the surrounding tissues.
So it's not just about cells dying off.
Mhm.
It's also that they can stick around and cause trouble.
Yeah, it's a bit of both.
But wait, didn't we talk about that study with the C. elegans dar? The microscopic creatures that survived being frozen for thousands of years? If they can just hit pause on aging, why can't we?
That's a really fascinating case, isn't it?
It seems like it.
Those C. elegans darer, they have this amazing ability. They can enter a state called cryptobiosis.
Cryptobiosis.
It's basically like a really, really deep sleep. Their metabolism grinds almost to a halt, which lets them survive these extreme conditions.
Wow.
It's incredible. But whether we can replicate that in humans, that's a whole other can of worms, so to speak.
Okay, so maybe human hibernation isn't right around the corner.
Probably not, no.
But we're already talking about cells that seem to defy aging. What about those immortal HeLa cells you hear about? If those can keep dividing forever, why can't ours?
Yes, the HeLa cells. They're a bit of a scientific celebrity, aren't they?
It seems that way. Yeah.
They were derived from a cervical cancer patient back in 1951,
Wow, 1951.
and they've been dividing in labs ever since. They're incredibly valuable for research. We've learned so much from them, but their immortality, it comes with a bit of an asterisk.
Ooh, how so?
They're cancerous. Their uncontrolled growth is what makes them keep dividing, but it's also what makes them, well, not ideal for, living a long and healthy life.
So it's like winning the lottery, but then having to spend the rest of your life in hiding. Not exactly a win-win.
That's a good way to put it. The HeLa case, it just goes to show how complex all of this is. It's not as simple as just flipping a switch to make cells immortal. There are trade-offs, and we have to be incredibly cautious about unintended consequences.
Okay, so we've got these biological limits on how many times our cells can divide, and we haven't quite cracked the code on hitting pause like the C. elegans. What's next? Are we stuck with our current lifespan, however long that may be?
Not necessarily. Remember that optimistic article we mentioned? The one from therapies?
Oh, right, yeah.
They actually delve into some pretty cutting-edge technologies that could potentially extend our lifespan significantly.
Like what? Give us the good stuff.
We're talking gene editing, nanotechnology, even the potential of artificial intelligence playing a role.
Whoa, okay, hold up. Gene editing for a longer life. That sounds like something straight out of, like, a sci-fi movie. Gene editing for a longer life. It does kind of sound like a sci-fi movie, honestly. Like, can scientists actually just tweak our genes so we live longer?
It's definitely a hot area of research, and there have actually been some pretty remarkable results.
Oh, yeah? Like what?
Well, in simpler organisms, at least we're talking like worms and flies, scientists have actually used gene editing to make them live longer.
No way, really? That's
Yeah.
kind of wild. But those are, like, tiny creatures. What about using that kind of technology on, us, humans?
That's the billion-dollar question, right? Human aging is so incredibly complex. It's not like there's just one gene to tweak. It's this whole symphony of genes all interacting in ways we don't fully grasp yet.
Right, it's got to be more complicated than just flipping a switch.
Exactly. Plus, you've got the whole ethical aspect to consider. We're talking about messing with the very blueprint of life here. It's not something to take lightly.
Definitely not. Speaking of futuristic-sounding solutions, the Fair Observer article mentioned nanotechnology, too. Like, tiny little nanobots swimming around in our bodies, fixing things at a cellular level.
Yeah.
Is that just sci-fi? Or is that a real possibility?
It does sound pretty sci-fi, doesn't it?
It really does.
We're not quite at the nanobot stage just yet,
Yeah.
but nanotechnology in general, huge potential for healthcare. Imagine being able to deliver drugs directly to where they're needed in the body. No more side effects. Or nanosensors that could constantly monitor your health, giving you real-time feedback. That's the kind of thing we're talking about.
So instead of waiting for something to go wrong, you're staying ahead of it.
Exactly. Early detection is everything. And nanotechnology could revolutionize how we approach healthcare and, yeah, potentially even add healthy years to our lifespan.
That makes a lot of sense. So we've got these promising technologies like gene editing, nanotechnology, but maybe they're not quite ready for prime time yet. So while we're waiting for science to catch up, what can people actually do right now to increase their chances of living a longer, healthier life?
Well, the Fair Observer article actually highlighted something really simple: exercise.
Exercise. Really?
They might seem almost too obvious, but they particularly emphasize strength and balance training as we age.
Interesting. So not just getting your heart rate up, but like building those muscles too.
Exactly. It goes back to that difference between lifespan and health span. It's not just about living longer, it's about making sure those years are healthy and active and enjoyable, and that's something we have some control over right now.
That's a really good point. Instead of waiting for some magic solution, we can start making choices today that'll set us up for a better future, however long that future may be.
100%. And those choices, they don't have to be complicated. Eating a balanced diet, making sure you're getting enough sleep, managing stress, those things all play a role in a longer, healthier life.
So it's a holistic approach, really.
Yeah.
Taking care of our minds and our body.
Exactly. And hey, maybe with a little luck, a lot of research, we'll all be celebrating our 120th birthdays before we know it.
I like the optimism. But in the meantime, it sounds like we've all got some work to do, taking care of ourselves, staying informed about these incredible scientific advancements. So if you're as intrigued by all of this as we are, we definitely encourage you to check out the full articles from Fair Observer and Nature Aging. It's a fascinating, complex topic, and there's so much more to explore.
Absolutely.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, keep those brain cells firing. And remember, age is just a number, but a healthy life, that's a gift.